We bought our place about 5 years ago on the river here in Franklin County, Missouri. Things happen on a daily basis, like howls, tree knocks, and something looming in our woods. Our son used to travel home late at night on his electric bike, 2.5 miles from town to home here. He stopped traveling at night, around 3 a.m., after something that was 7 feet tall, white and hairy, crossed a field next to the road and was gone. It terrified him so much that he moved into town permanently and will not live out here. Myself and my husband heard strange howl calls. I hear tree knocks on our back land and smell a horrible wet dog smell sometimes coming off of the hill. I do not trail walk our land anymore, nor do I go out after dark. I have had chickens disappear from a locked coop and 2 peacocks killed inside a locked 10-foot by 10-foot cage. The 200 acres down the road is where my son seen the one head towards. As a minister, I was hesitant to write this, but feel something is out here and in a group. I believe an investigation should be done. My guard dog refuses to be out in the backland, as if it is frightened by something. I won't even swim in our pool alone. I feel watched, and a few times seen something tall in the woods, but could not get the nerve to get closer, as we have found deer legs and parts that should not have been killed, as we did not hunt our forest animals. Today, I heard tree knocks again, and when I stepped out to feed the barn cats, nope, I came back in. It creeps me out. I almost want to sell our place, but it's so beautiful out here. The bluff off the backland is a 100-foot bluff above the river. Lots of open spaced land in a deep hollow that is remote and thousands of acres around. Thank you for listening. I want to start off by saying I don't know what I saw. I know it wasn't a bear. Having said that, I don't know what to think. So this last Saturday, at about 12:30, my hunting partner and I went to a cave conservation area to scout and see what conservation has cleared. We crossed a creek bottom to where there are small food plots. Once we crossed to the other side of the field, we saw something on the trail, about 200 yards off. Even from that distance, I could see that it was big. I noted a head by a limb that I judged was maybe 5 or 6 feet off the ground. What we saw then crouched and sort of swayed a few times before taking off to the right and stopping. Not being sure what we saw, we crossed into the next field and discussed what it was. We turned around and went back to the field we had seen the creature, and it was gone. We crossed back to where it had been and found a large, fresh footprint. I put my foot down next to the print. I wear a size 10.5, and the print is way bigger than my foot. We estimate it to be 16 or 18 inches long. In that same area, we found broken trees that had been pulled up and then wove between other trees. What does that? Also, the limb we thought was maybe 5 or 6 feet off the ground was more like 8 feet 9, maybe. What we saw was big, and when it moved, it almost glided. It was dark gray with brown hair. It was bipedal. I couldn't make out any facial features or say 100% what it was. We were too far away. This past October, I was walking along a road by City Lake Park in Sullivan, Missouri. It was around 11:20 p.m. on a Thursday night, and the park is remote and empty on a night like that. I'm 29 and stand 6'6". My vision is 15/20 in my left eye, better than normal. As I came around the curb, I had the National Preserve State Park to my right. As I looked ahead some 70 to 100 feet, and I saw this tall monkey with long legs go by under one of the lights. I immediately looked to my right at the tree line as fear overwhelmed my body. I turned around, pacing myself back towards town, trying to make sense of what I saw. It stood about 7 feet, and it was hairy. The hair of the arms was hanging about 3 to 4 inches. It was the only part of the silhouette that was clearly hairy, and I could notice clearly that it had ape-like hairy arms. I went back to the house and researched on the subject on YouTube, but most of the videos showed a much heavier set creature. A lot of people that I talked to just cannot believe me. Last night, I came across the Jacobs video, and the similarity struck me. I know that it is hard to believe what I saw, and I myself was a skeptic of this phenomenon until it happened to me. Now I know that the creature and cause exists. Do we know why it is so elusive? It seems that it was leaving the park when it saw me. Why would a creature so large be scared of a human? I have no intention to gain any benefit from my experience. The sighting occurred sometime after dark. I was in my sleeping bag, sleeping on a sandbar with 3 other guys on the river after an afternoon of canoeing and fishing. I was awakened and was looking upstream into a beautiful bright full moon. The light being given off was so bright that you could read by the moonlight alone. Suddenly, about 20 yards upstream to my left, a very large, very massive creature walking on 2 legs stepped into the river to cross. It appeared to have a very massive upper body. Because of the moonlight and angle, I could see that its body had a very furry appearance to it. When it walked, I could see its arms sway and its knees bend with every step. I also noted a very pronounced crest on the top of its head and a very pronounced ridge in its brow line. I was on my back looking upstream and propped myself up on my elbows for a better look. As I did this, Greg, who was off to my left, propped himself up and said out loud, "What the hell is it?" I answered, not taking my eyes off the creature. "I don't know. Must be somebody ripping off cabins," implying a human form. Immediately upon Greg's words, the creature turned at the waist and looked at us, only taking its eyes off us to look at the other bank when it exited the river. When it looked at us, its face blacked out due to turning away from the moonlight. I remember hearing the creature cutting the water, which was about 3 feet deep, as it walked. The water flow was very fast, and no man could have crossed this area and remained standing for very long. The water came up to the creature's knees. I could see its knees bend as it lifted them to walk. It exited the river on the right side, and we lost sight of it. This sighting lasted only about 10 seconds, but lives vividly in my memory. The next morning, when Greg and I recalled what we had seen to the other guys, we were severely ridiculed. Because of this, we didn't really go back and check for tracks or other signs. We both agreed that what we saw was not human and far too tall and massive to be a person or a bear. We both then agreed that it had to be a Bigfoot that we had seen. I do recall that the draw that the Bigfoot had come out of prior to entering the water was very dark, with thick brush and a spring-fed creek in it. As we were floating by, I remember having a very uneasy feeling about it as I was looking at it and would not have gone into it. I'm a Missouri resident. Back in 91 or 92, I can't remember which year, I was coming home and coming around a curve when I noticed eye shine. As I got closer, I could see a massive creature standing on the side of the road, reddish-brown color, at least 8 feet tall. As the truck lights hit this thing, it threw up its arm and covered its face. It was not a man in a suit or a bear. When I say massive, I mean massive. This thing was anywhere between 600 to 800 pounds. As the years went by, I moved but within 7 miles from where I saw this creature the first time. I have been here 19 years now. Back in the first years, I would come home at night and hear things that I've never heard before, not thinking it was a Bigfoot, just not knowing what I was hearing, until one night about 2:30 in the morning, I let my little dog out and heard a holler that was long, and to me, sounded like a warning. I swooped my little dog up and ran in the house and shook. We have 119 acres, mostly wooded. My mother moved a trailer onto my land and was here for about 7 years before she passed away in 2010. She would call me and tell me something is hitting her door or trailer at night very hard. She also was throwing rocks out of the yard to keep her lawnmower from getting them, and to her surprise, 2 rocks came right back at her over her head. She never seen what threw them though. That also happened to me when I would be weed eating her yard. One time, she heard a pack of dogs running and barking. She went out to look, and she said all of a sudden, something firmly started talking in animal language to these dogs, and then she never heard the dogs again. She stated that if an 800-pound gorilla could talk, that's what it would sound like. Around the time, she started telling me things were hitting the trailer at night, and she was hearing walking around outside. Then, it started here at my house. Rocks hitting on the house, rocks thrown on top of the house. It came up onto my porch. I heard it scuffle and run off as I was lying in bed. I knew whatever was just on my porch was extremely heavy. I have never been so petrified in all my life. Then, the wood knocks the very next night. My husband worked nights, so it was just my daughter and I at home. After my husband retired, he was working on my truck at our bottom barn, and as he pulled down there, he saw something that he said was not a man or a bear, but it ran so fast that he didn't know what it was. He said it was big and fast. After that, he started finding footprints. He would come and get me and show them to me. I heard this thing holler on several occasions, wood knocking and walking around outside. So much has happened throughout the years here, really way too much to document. I have noticed that it comes around if you sing. At the end of last summer, I bought a cheap little night vision scope. One night, I asked my husband, "You want to go sit out on the front porch with me?" He said okay, so we went out and took the night vision scope. I turned it on, started focusing it, and to my amazement, there it was in the woods, in the darkness, 50 yards in front of the house. As I was looking at this thing, I said, "Oh my, Henry, it's a Bigfoot." I'm sure he was thinking, yeah, right. But I handed him the night vision scope, pointed, and said, "It's standing right there." I waited a minute and asked, "Do you see it?" He said, "Yes, I see it." I said, "I told you there was a Bigfoot, and it was out there." This thing was standing there watching us as we were watching it. It was approximately 8 feet or taller, and huge. Its arms hung down past its knees, and kind of curved as like a monkey's would. Its head was crowned to some degree. We passed the scope back and forth to each other. My husband couldn't believe what he was seeing. I watched it crouch down and stand right back up. While we were watching that one, something other than it threw a rock on the carport. My big brave husband wanted to walk out to it. I told him it could rip him apart with little effort if it felt threatened. My husband started to walk out to it. There was a sudden flash of movement in the scope, and then it was gone. I couldn't see it anymore, so I hollered out, "I don't see it anymore, you better not go out there." But it was gone. It has never hurt or threatened us, besides growling at me. In total, I saw this creature 4 times, and only one is questionable. If I didn't see it with my own 2 eyes, I would be skeptical too, I suppose. My husband also has informed me that as he was walking the dog this morning, he heard a wood knock in one direction and a whistle in another. I heard the whistles the other night when I went out to see what the dog was raising Cain about.